everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I will be sharing with you a list of books that will hopefully get you out of a reading slump. Hi everyone, my name is Lexi, and welcome back to my channel. Recently, I have been pondering reading slumps. Let me get my coffee. That's better. I love coffee. Ah, yes, the dreaded reading slump. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the word reading slump or the term reading slump, basically it means that you just can't find anything you want to read. Maybe you really want to read, but literally every book that you start, you immediately set down. We've all been there, okay? And it's not a fun place to be, baby. So I decided to put together a list of books that I think are fast-paced, that are really engaging, and that are easy to totally fall into the world. These are my recommendations for if you are in a reading slump, and hopefully one of these books will get you out of there. The very first book I have to recommend is Ready Player One, and this is by Ernest Cline. The writing of this book is so incredibly fast-paced that it is impossible to put it down, in my opinion, once you've started it. Also, if you've watched the movie and you're like, I don't know, because the movie wasn't all that. Okay, I agree. Ignore the movie and just go to the book, because the book, chef's kiss, so good. So this follows Wade Watts, and he lives in the future. I think it's like in 2044, when the world has gone to shit, which I mean, like, same, right? And in this world, you can go to a place called the Oasis, which is basically online. You can create your avatar, you can be whoever you want to be, and Wade lives his life to escape his reality completely online. He even goes to school online. Well, the creator of the Oasis is this eccentric billionaire, and when he dies, he says that he wants to leave the Oasis and all of his money to the person who can crack this major scavenger hunt in the Oasis. And the Oasis isn't like a single room. I mean, it's basically like a whole world. And he leaves a clue for anyone who wants to try to find the first Easter egg, or like the first part of this scavenger hunt. And everyone kind of cracks it up that like it doesn't really work because no one has been able to find the clue for like years and years and years. But then Wade cracks it, and now suddenly everyone is interested in Wade. They want to get him. They want to find the next clue. It is so wonderful. I loved it so much. Also, there's a ton of like really fun 80s references in this, which was really cool. So I highly recommend this book to anyone, whether you're a fan of video games or not. It's really good. The next book is a recent new favorite of mine, and that is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. One of my favorite parts about this book for breaking a reading slump is that the chapters are so short. And in my opinion, that can actually have a really big influence on how fast I read a book. Some of the chapters are a page, some of them are 3 pages, some are like, you know, a typical chapter like 6 or 7 pages. Some of them are just a sentence or a couple of paragraphs. That actually helps build the momentum in reading this as well. So I love the format of this book. This book though is just so unique and so engaging. It follows our main protagonist, Nora Seed, and Nora Seed has decided to unfortunately take her own life. And when she dies, she finds herself in between life and death at a library called the Midnight Library. And the librarian says that every single book is a new life choice that she could have made. Because in this book, the multiverse theory, so like, you know, there's an infinite amount of yous making different decisions exists. And so Nora gets to go and see what life would have made her the happiest. It is such a phenomenal book, and it has so many excellent and beautiful quotes. I absolutely loved it, but also I just could not get enough of learning about Nora's life. So even if you're not interested in the commentary that it has on regret and living life to the fullest, which I mean, I think it just does beautifully, the storyline itself is just so interesting, and you were rooting for Nora the whole time. I loved it, highly recommend it. It's also relatively short, which is gonna help you with a reading slump too. I don't even think it's 300 pages. It's not, it's 288. We love a short book. So highly recommend The Midnight Library from Matt Haig. Next up, let's do some middle grade. So the one that I really want to recommend is The Girl Who Drank the Moon, and this is by Kelly Barnhill. This is one of the most stunning pieces of work I've ever read in any genre. I think it is unbelievably beautiful. This is about a swamp witch, and the swamp witch takes babies who are abandoned, and she takes them over to a neighboring town to get them adopted. And one night, when she is taking a baby over, she feeds the baby moonlight instead of starlight, and she gives the baby magic. And she kind of decides, I'm gonna adopt this little girl myself, and we are following that journey. We're following her in the swamp, raising this little girl. We have so many beautiful, whimsical characters, but this book has so many fun subplots going on, and you're trying to figure out why the town is abandoning these kids, and what's really happening, who the swamp witch is, and I feel like it's one of those books that any person at any age could fall in love with. It is lyrically written, it is fantastic, highly recommend. Also, I recommend middle grade in general when you have a reading slump, because it's sort of like watching a Disney movie. Like, it gets you feeling warm and fuzzy and happy, and it just kind of takes you out of your reality. We love to see it. Next up is a book that I have no idea where it is. It's like one of my favorite books, so I am a little panicked that I can't find it, but it's fine. And that is The Honeymooners by Christina Lauren. This is perfect for people who are fans of romance, but even if you're not a fan of romance, give this a try anyways, because while it is steamy, it's not too steamy, I think. So I think everyone can enjoy it. So this follows Olive and Ethan. Olive is the maid of honor to her sister. Everyone at this wedding gets completely sick, and the tickets to the honeymoon are like non-refundable, so Olive decides to take it, and little does she know that Ethan, who is the best man, decides to take the other ticket. And they absolutely despise each other, but they have to pretend to be in love so that they can get this free vacation to Hawaii. It is wonderful. The angst, the hating, the misunderstanding, like the sex appeal. I had so much fun reading this. Highly recommend the audiobook for this, because the narrator is so good at doing Ethan's voice and doing Olive's voice perfectly. We love to see it. It's a 5 out of 5 from me. I love it. The next book that I have to recommend is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This looks like a thicker book, but the real book I think is like, it's a novella, so it might even be less than 200 pages. This one is just really thick because it has like lots of illustrations and like lots of really fun little elements to it. This is one of my favorite books of all time, possibly my favorite book of all time. It is very weird. There's a lot of weird elements, and I love this because it blends a lot of different genres, and it really keeps the readers on their toes as to what is going to happen next. This is about the narrator who goes back to his hometown for a family funeral, and while he is there, he starts to remember his childhood. And then we go all the way back to his childhood, where everything is from the perspective of a little boy. It sort of feels like middle grade, but it's definitely not. It's very adult, and it is this little tale of him with his friend Lottie, this mysterious otherworldly force basically. And it is so incredible. The commentary on life is just a whole other thing I could make a whole video about, and I think it's brilliant. But the reason I think it'll break you out of a reading slump is because it is so fast paced. I think it really keeps the reader engaged with everything that's happening, and you just want to know what happens next. There's a lot of magic in here, there's a lot of whimsy in here, there's a lot of plot twists in here, and the character development is on a whole other level. I think that the characters in here are better than any character development that I've ever read. I'm saying that weird, but like basically these are my favorite characters ever, and Neil Gaiman is a god. The next book I have to share with you is a thriller, and just like I think middle grade can be a great break, kind of like a Disney movie, thrillers, they're not Disney movies, but thrillers can also break you out of a reading slump because they are so fast paced. I can read a good thriller in under 24 hours, no matter what the page length, because I just won't sleep. Like I I won't do anything except for read, you know? That's how great thrillers are. And this is my favorite thriller, and it is Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This book was so fast-paced, so wonderful. The plot twists in it, I had no idea. Like, I didn't see any of it coming, and I could not recommend this more, especially if you love thrillers. You will love this book. But even if you don't, I think that this was like my second thriller I ever read, and this is what really solidified my love for thrillers. And now I have to read a thriller every single month. So this follows our main protagonist, Jules, and Jules is really strapped for cash. She's really broke, and she sees this kind of almost too perfect job in the newspaper where they are looking for like an apartment sitter in this very elite, beautiful Manhattan building. It's like a penthouse. It's kind of too good to be true because they pay her an absurd amount of money, but also all she has to do is sleep there, and she gets a place to stay as well. We see her in this apartment, and she's not allowed to interact with any of the other tenants in this apartment, and there seems to be some shady stuff happening. Some people are disappearing, and Jules is determined to find out what's happening. But is it gonna be too late for her to escape this apartment? Next up is a fantasy, and this one is a fantasy that I have heard mixed reviews on, but I personally love, and I devoured this in 24 hours, and that is An Unkindness of Magicians, and this is by Kat Howard. So this is kind of cool because it's sort of like Gossip Girl meets The Magicians, which is such a fun like combination. So this takes place in New York City, and I know a bunch of it takes place in Manhattan, if not all of it, and we are following these wealthy families who also are extremely powerful, and there's something called the turning. Every turning they basically duel for who gets like the ultimate power, and you get like control of certain things, and each family has to submit someone. But in these duels you can actually die, and people do die. They don't always die, they can like withdraw, but like people are gonna die. And so we're seeing all of these shady things that are happening with these wealthy families in New York, and there's like somebody who no one has heard about who's representing a family who wasn't even supposed to be on the map this year, and she's kicking ass, and it's so good. I really, really love it. If you love fast-paced fantasy things, genuinely could not recommend this enough. I'm intentionally trying to leave the synopsis a little vague because I want you to read it and I don't want to spoil anything for you. Next up, let's do another middle grade to break things up, and that would be Nevermoor, The Trials of Morgan Crow. Again, if you don't ever read middle grade, give this a go. This is so incredible. I genuinely don't think that you're gonna read anything more engaging or magical. It does not matter your age. You will love Nevermoor. It is so good. One of the things that makes this so quick, in my opinion, like so fast paced, is that this is the perfect book because it involves trials. I don't know if people like trials. I happen to love books with trials in them just because I think it's so interesting. But Morgan Crow, our main protagonist, is entered into this contest to see if she can get into a magical secret society. And this magical society, you have to like rank in all of these trials, and each trial is so fast paced. There's a race for one of them, and I remember reading this and I was like screaming while I was reading it. I was like, oh my gosh, because it's so good. It's so unexpected. It's fantastic. This book is also really, really funny, which I think is excellent for like really engaging the readers. I read this book in under 24 hours. I've reread it several times. I recommend it to everyone. You should read it. Next up is a bit of a thriller, but also, I don't know how else to explain it. A little bit of a dark academia style. Highly recommend the audio for this one because the narrator does a fantastic job at incorporating the Shakespeare being read along with different voices for all the characters, and I thought it was great. And that is If We Were Villains by ML Rio. So this involves a murder, which you know right off the bat, and I think really adds like a huge level of intrigue to kind of grasp the reader's attention. This follows Oliver, and Oliver has been in jail for the past 10 years and he's just gotten out. And the detective who put him in jail is asking him, you say that you were innocent. If you really didn't kill this person, who did? And Oliver is recounting all of the things that happened. And it's incredible because we follow him at his university with all of his friends, and we're trying to figure out who died and who did it. And the entire time I was on the edge of my seat. I feel like the writing in this is particularly strong and very engaging. You will fall in love with every single character, but also it's not just that element of the murder mystery that's happening. There's also a lot of relationships that are on the cusp of forming, and the whole time you're trying to figure out who's gonna end up together and if that plays a role in anything. And it's also so beautiful. It's so brilliant. It will break your heart. I could not recommend this more. I'm just telling you, it's incredible. And then finally, the very last book that I would like to recommend to you if you are in a reading slump is The House in the Cerulean Sea, and this is by TJ Klune. This is one of the best books I've ever read. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I think that a lot of the conversations in here are incredibly important. So this follows Linus, and Linus is a caseworker for orphans. Essentially, he is sent to different orphanages for magical children to make sure that the children are safe and to make sure that the orphanage is safe for the kids. He is sent on a special mission to the house in the Cerulean Sea because the orphans in this house might bring the destruction of the world. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. There's a little bit of a queer love story in here, which we love. There are all of these fantastic children in here who you will absolutely have such a strong heart for. Like, I want to adopt all of these kids. Everything about it is perfect. The writing is flawless, the storyline, the pacing. I think it's a light enough read where no matter where you are in life, it will fit in perfectly, whether you want something serious or something lighthearted, something funny, something sweet or romantic. This is gonna fit the bill. This is my #1 recommendation. I love it. I love it so much. And there you guys have it. Those are all of the books that I recommend to get you out of a reading slump. If you're in one, Godspeed. I hate reading slumps so much. Go easy on yourself. Reading is supposed to be fun. And if you take a couple months off reading, I hope you enjoy Netflix. Do you have any recommendations for getting out of a reading slump or some fast-paced books? If you do, please let me know. I would love to add a couple titles to my Goodreads and get to them as well. I think that is it for now, you guys. So until next time, book lovers, keep your head in the clouds and your heart in a book, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye!
You were my best friend. Didn't care about the rules, good on the weekends. I'll be in fools, drifting to deep space. So brave and so stupid, just like the movies. I was gonna stay in the fight with